Having served as a Navy SEAL, I've developed a keen sense of when a situation evolves from irritating to perilous. However, the day I observed three unfamiliar men in ill-fitting suits loitering near my residence would become the most surreal Thursday I had ever experienced. This was particularly true when they identified themselves as HOA representatives, insisting they had to inspect my 8-year-old daughter to ensure compliance with juvenile homeowner rules. The most significant issue? Our community does not have, and has never had, a homeowners association. This is the account of how I compelled these three imposters to drag themselves to the police station on shattered knees after their attempt to abduct my daughter. My name is Galvin Preston, and for the last 6 years, I have embraced a quiet existence in Silver Creek, a tranquil suburban enclave located about a 40-minute drive from Portland. Following 12 years with the SEALs and the loss of my wife, Meredith, to cancer 4 years prior, my sole desire was to create a stable environment for my daughter, Erica, and me. I had transitioned my career to cybersecurity consulting, which allowed me to work from home and be present for Erica when her school bus arrived. The neighborhood was idyllic, with tree-lined avenues, amicable neighbors, and a refreshing absence of any HOA decreeing the acceptable color for our mailboxes. That latter point was a significant factor in my decision to purchase the house. After spending years adhering to orders in the military, I had no interest in a power-tripping committee dictating my landscaping schedule. Erica, who had recently celebrated her 8th birthday, was the center of my world. She possessed her mother's inquisitive nature and my own determined spirit, a fascinating blend of traits. Her latest passion involved collecting various rocks and studying dinosaurs, resulting in our home being adorned with meticulously labeled geological specimens and fact sheets about prehistoric creatures that she had personally created. Each evening following dinner, we would sit on the porch as she proudly presented her newest discoveries, articulating with great detail why velociraptors were actually the size of turkeys, contrary to their depiction in films. These serene moments meant everything to me. They were the very thing I had fought for during extended deployments and dreamed of on frigid nights and locations I am still unable to discuss. Our existence had fallen into a pleasant and predictable rhythm. Erica would board the school bus at 7:30 a.m. I would then dedicate my day to conducting security evaluations for a range of clients until she returned home at 3 p.m. Our afternoons were filled with adventures, from hiking in the adjacent woodlands and visiting the Science Museum to simply collaborating on her continuous stream of school projects. Weekends were reserved for soccer practice, sleepovers with her best friend Amy from next door, and Sunday cookouts with our neighbors. It was not the life I had envisioned for myself at 25 when I felt invincible, but it was perfect in a way I could not have comprehended back then. The neighborhood itself was reminiscent of a Norman Rockwell painting. Silver Creek was established in the late 1990s by Tom Morrison, a local builder who, after amassing a fortune in the technology sector, chose to build his vision of an ideal community. He had intentionally designed it to be free of an HOA, having had his fill of bureaucratic complexities in Silicon Valley. The homes were all distinctive, the properties were spacious, and the community had a natural tendency to maintain itself. Our neighbors included retired educators, young families, a handful of fellow veterans, and even a former astronaut who delighted in setting up his telescope for communal stargazing events. The initial indication of trouble appeared on a Tuesday morning in late September. My neighbor, Carol Jenkins, a retired schoolteacher who had become a grandmother figure to Erica, came to my door clutching a formal white envelope. "Galvin, did you receive one of these?" she inquired, her typically bright expression clouded with concern. The letter, printed on high-quality paper with a professional-looking letterhead for the Silver Creek Homeowners Association, alleged she was in breach of Section 3.201 of the HOA bylaws due to non-compliant garden ornamentation. Specifically, the collection of painted rocks Erica had gifted her for Christmas. The associated fine was $300, payable within 10 days. "Carol, we don't have an HOA," I stated, scrutinizing the letter. My cybersecurity instincts took over at once. The letterhead appeared legitimate, but there were subtle giveaways. The contact address was a generic Gmail account. The phone number had a Nevada area code, and the listed website URL led to a domain that had been registered only 2 weeks prior. A quick online search confirmed my suspicions. There were no official state records of a registered Silver Creek HOA. Something was decidedly wrong. That evening, I created a neighborhood group chat and learned that 7 other households had been sent similar notices, each alleging different infractions with fines between $150 and $500. The Hendersons were cited because their trampoline was visible from the road, the Garcias for having an excessive number of potted plants on their porch, and poor Mr. Watanabe was assessed a $500 penalty for his beloved koi pond, which was labeled an unauthorized water feature. Every letter was impeccably formatted with legal-sounding jargon designed to intimidate the average person into paying without asking questions. However, this was not my first encounter with official-looking documents. In the seals, we received training in identifying forgeries and counterfeit credentials, skills that proved surprisingly applicable to cybersecurity. I dedicated that evening to what I do best, digital reconnaissance. The domain for the purported HOA website was registered through a company in the Cayman Islands. Always a significant red flag. The phone number was traced to a virtual office provider in Las Vegas. More revealingly, a reverse image search of the letterhead logo showed it had been appropriated from a legitimate HOA in Florida and minimally altered. Someone had invested effort into this deception, but their amateurish errors suggested they typically targeted individuals less versed in technology. My neighbor Felix Sawyer, a local patrol officer living 3 houses away, was just as skeptical. "Been here 15 years, Galvin," he remarked over beers in my garage that weekend. This neighborhood was specifically built without an HOA. The original developer, Tom Morrison, loathed them, called them legalized extortion. Felix had already checked the phone number against police databases with no results. Probably some kind of scam. But without more evidence, there's not much we can officially do. People pretending to be an HOA isn't technically illegal, unless they actually take money under false pretenses. Felix was a dedicated officer who genuinely cared for the community he served. We had become friends over the past few years, connecting over our shared military service. He had been in the Army infantry before joining the police force. His daughter, Sophia, was in Erica's class, and the 2 girls often had playdates. "Keep your eyes open," he cautioned, finishing his beer. "These scams usually escalate. If they're bold enough to try this, they might try other things too." His words would prove to be prophetic sooner than either of us could have imagined. That Wednesday evening, events took a more sinister turn. While working in my home office, I observed a black Suburban moving slowly past my house. It came to a stop directly in front, and through my security cameras, I saw a passenger taking multiple photographs of our property. Erica, who was doing her homework at the kitchen table, looked up at the sound of the idling engine. "Dad, why are those people taking pictures of our house?" she asked, her voice filled with a pure, childlike concern. My protective instincts surged. "I don't know, sweetheart, but I'm going to find out," I told her, giving her shoulder a reassuring squeeze. The vehicle departed before I could get outside, but my cameras captured a clear image of the license plate. That night, after Erica was asleep, I had a contact at the DMV run the plate. The Suburban was registered to a rental agency and leased to an entity named Property Assessment Services, LLC. Further investigation revealed this was another shell company established just a month earlier. The paper trail was becoming intriguing. I began to chart the connections using the same analytical software I used for tracking cyber threats. A familiar pattern emerged, a web of shell companies, fabricated identities, and funds channeled through various accounts to hide their source. 2 days later, Carol called me in a state of alarm. "Galvin, there are 3 men at my door saying they're from the HOA. They're demanding to collect the fine in cash and asking about you and Erica." I immediately accessed my security system app and activated all exterior cameras. Indeed, I could see 3 men in poorly fitting suits on Carol's porch. The leader, a heavy-set man with slicked-back graying hair, was gesturing forcefully while clutching what looked like an official binder. His 2 associates flanked him. One was tall and muscular with a build that suggested time in prison, while the other was younger, thin, and nervously scanning his surroundings. I called Carol back. "Don't let them in. Tell them you need to verify their credentials first. I'm coming over." However, by the time I arrived at her house 30 seconds later, they were already heading toward their vehicle, the same black Suburban from before. They noticed my approach and halted. The leader stepped forward with a practiced smile that failed to reach his eyes. "Mr. Preston, I presume. I'm Edward Dawson, president of the Silver Creek HOA. We've been trying to contact you regarding several violations on your property." His voice had the counterfeit friendliness I associated with every con artist I had ever met. "There is no Silver Creek HOA," I stated flatly, placing myself between them and my house, where Erica was. "I suggest you leave before this becomes a police matter." Dawson, however, was not easily discouraged. He opened his binder, displaying what appeared to be official documents, complete with city seals and signatures. "I understand there might be some confusion. The HOA was recently established through proper channels. We have all the documentation right here," he said, patting the binder for emphasis. "In fact, we have particular concerns about your property. As a single parent, there are additional regulations regarding child welfare and property maintenance standards that apply to your situation." The tall man, whom I would later identify as Marcus Reed, shifted his position slightly, obstructing my view of their vehicle. Meanwhile, the nervous younger one, Tyler Watts, was typing quickly on his phone. Every instinct honed during my years in special operations screamed that these men were a threat. I saw that Marcus had prison tattoos visible above his collar, and Tyler kept looking at my house with an intensity that made my skin crawl. They were not just scammers, they were something more dangerous. "Listen carefully," I said, my voice lowering to a register that once made junior sailors stand at attention. "You're going to get in your vehicle and leave. If I see you near my property or speaking to my neighbors again without a police escort, we're going to have a problem." Dawson's facade crumbled completely, his eyes turning hard. "Mr. Preston, you're making a serious mistake. The HOA has legal authority to investigate properties where minor children reside. We have concerns about the welfare of your daughter, given your background," he said, stressing the last word to imply he knew of my military past. "We'll be back tomorrow with the proper authorities if necessary." They departed, but not before Tyler took several more pictures of my house, deliberately aiming his phone toward Erica's bedroom window. As their Suburban turned the corner, a cold rage began to build inside me. They had just threatened my daughter. In my world, that was a line from which there was no retreat. I went back inside to see Erica standing at the window, her homework abandoned. "Dad, those men seemed angry. Did we do something wrong?" The anxiety in her voice almost broke my heart. "No, princess. Some people are just bullies who try to scare others. But you know what we do with bullies." She managed a small smile. "Do we stand up to them?" "That's right. And Daddy's very good at standing up to bullies." That night, after Erica was sound asleep, I activated what I referred to as my war room, a secure setup in my basement office where I conducted my most sensitive cybersecurity operations. Using a mix of OSINT, open-source intelligence, tools, dark web searches, and some gray hat methods I had acquired over the years, I started a deep investigation into our 3 visitors. The first step was to run their faces through several image recognition databases. My security cameras had provided clear images, and facial recognition led me to social media profiles, arrest records, and news reports from various states. Edward Dawson's digital history was both extensive and unsettling. In addition to a revoked real estate license and fraud convictions, I discovered posts on clandestine forums where he boasted about his social engineering prowess. He had authored detailed manuals on intimidating homeowners, identifying psychological vulnerabilities to exploit, and creating persuasive fraudulent documents. In a post from 6 months prior, he mentioned trying a new tactic on military families, reasoning they were conditioned to obey figures of authority. The fact that he was specifically preying on veterans made my blood boil. Marcus Reed's background check uncovered links to organized crime in California. Through publicly available court documents, I found testimony connecting him to a syndicate specializing in distressed property acquisition, a euphemism for coercing people from their homes through intimidation. Cross-referencing his known associates with property records revealed a distinct pattern. Neighborhoods would suffer a series of break-ins, acts of vandalism, and harassment, soon followed by below-market cash offers from shadowy buyers. Reed was the enforcer who made residents desperate to sell and move. Tyler Watts was the tech specialist, and ironically, his digital footprint was the most difficult to trace. He was skilled at covering his tracks, but I found his errors within the metadata of the HOA website. The PDF documents on the site contained author information that led back to his real name. From there, I followed his activities across several hacking forums. He specialized in a practice known as municipal spoofing, which involved creating counterfeit government websites and documents that appeared authentic enough to deceive most people. His toolkit included templates for fake city seals, official letterheads, and even email systems designed to imitate government domains. The decisive breakthrough occurred when I gained access to Tyler's cloud storage by exploiting a vulnerability in his two-factor authentication. Inside, I discovered a treasure trove of incriminating evidence, detailed dossiers on every family in Silver Creek, complete with financial data, daily schedules, and identified points of leverage. My family's file was labeled Priority Target, with notes on my status as a single parent, my military background, and the potential to use child welfare concerns as leverage. The extent of their surveillance was deeply disturbing. The most damning find, however, was a folder titled Previous Operations. It contained records of similar scams executed in Riverside, California, Tempe, Arizona, and Henderson, Nevada. Each operation followed the same script: formation of a fake HOA, escalating fines and harassment, strategic targeting of vulnerable residents, and ultimately, forced sales at prices well below market value. I found spreadsheets that tracked their success rates and profit margins. In total, they had displaced 47 families and generated over $12 million in profits for their unidentified sponsors. The money trail for these sponsors led to Apex Investments and a man named Benedict Griffith. Through a labyrinth of shell companies and offshore accounts, I traced the flow of funds. Griffith was not merely employing these criminals. He was orchestrating a sophisticated operation that operated just within the ambiguous boundaries of legality. By using the HOA structure, they could shield their activities behind the guise of administrative actions and community standards enforcement. It was a brilliantly malevolent scheme. I also found email correspondence between Griffith and Dawson regarding their Silver Creek project, in which Griffith explicitly directed them to focus on the military family with the young daughter. They always fold when children are involved. I spent the next several hours compiling what I termed my evidence packages. The first was a thorough digital archive containing everything I had discovered, encrypted and uploaded to multiple secure cloud services equipped with deadman switches. If anything were to happen to me, this information would be automatically disseminated to the FBI, local law enforcement, 3 major news outlets, and a dozen colleagues in the cybersecurity field. The second package was physical, printed documents, USB drives with backup data, and detailed timelines of the conspiracy, all secured in a safety deposit box with instructions for Carol to access if necessary. My SEAL training instilled in me the principle that intelligence is worthless without action. I needed to convert this information into a tactical upper hand. Using the access I had gained to their systems, I deployed tracking software on all their devices. I could now monitor their communications in real time, view their location data, and even remotely activate their microphones. While not strictly legal, it was a response to their threat against my daughter. I also configured alerts for specific keywords: Erica, Preston, school, welfare check, anything that could signal an immediate threat to my family. The next phase involved laying false trails to misdirect them. I created fake financial documents indicating significant debt and mortgage trouble, then deliberately left them visible during a video call I knew Tyler was monitoring. I fabricated a story about an upcoming work trip that would leave Erica at home with a babysitter, perfect bait for their kidnapping scheme. Every piece of disinformation was meticulously crafted to lure them into my trap while ensuring Erica remained safe. I also activated my network of former special operations contacts. Through encrypted communication channels, I shared my findings and asked them to look for similar operations in their respective areas. The feedback was startling. Comparable scams were active in military-heavy communities across the nation. An old swim buddy from BUD/S had run into a fraudulent HOA in Virginia Beach. A Delta operator I had worked with in Afghanistan reported the same thing near Fort Bragg. We were facing a nationwide operation targeting military families. With the digital battlefield secured, I shifted my focus to physical security. I installed concealed cameras with infrared capabilities, motion sensors of military-grade sensitivity, and even pressure plates beneath key floorboards. Each device was connected to a central monitoring system with AI-driven threat detection. If anyone entered my property with hostile intentions, I would know their precise location, movement patterns, and even their heart rate via thermal imaging. This system was analogous to what we would use for compound security in high-risk environments. The final element was psychological warfare. I began to leave subtle hints that I was aware of their activities. During their surveillance of my house, I would occasionally wave directly at their hidden cameras. When Tyler attempted to breach my home network, he encountered a honeypot server containing a file named I_C_U_Tyler.dl, which held his own home address. When Marcus tailed me to the grocery store, I had a loud phone conversation about my friends from the teams who enjoyed dealing with bullies. The objective was to make them anxious and push them into making errors. By the time my preparations were complete, I had transitioned from a worried father into something far more formidable, a trained operator with total intelligence dominance over his adversaries. They believed they were stalking a vulnerable single parent. Instead, they had stumbled into the kill zone of someone who had spent more than a decade mastering the art of warfare. They had threatened my daughter, invaded my community, and ruined innocent lives for financial gain. Now, they were about to discover why Navy SEALs are reputed to be the most dangerous men on the planet when defending what is most important. I also uncovered something that sent a chill down my spine. By cross-referencing their known associates, I found a link to Apex Investments, a real estate development firm that had been aggressively purchasing properties throughout the Portland suburbs. The CEO, Benedict Griffith, was known for his ruthless tactics in land acquisition. His company had made several low-ball offers to homeowners in Silver Creek over the past year, all of which had been declined. It appeared Griffith had opted for a new approach, using Dawson's crew to pressure residents into selling by fostering a hostile living environment through a fake HOA. But there was more. Hidden within court documents from Griffith's earlier business dealings, I found mentions of properties acquired through distress sales after the homeowners encountered various legal issues. In every instance, there were similar patterns: fabricated code violations, harassment, and, in 2 cases, accusations of child endangerment that led to quick sales. The cases were scattered across different states, making the pattern difficult to discern unless one was actively searching for it. They had honed their strategy over years, and now they were deploying it in Silver Creek. I spent the remainder of the night reinforcing our digital and physical defenses. I upgraded our alarm system, installed additional cameras with night vision, and placed motion sensors around the property's perimeter. I also compiled detailed dossiers on our 3 antagonists, complete with photographs, criminal records, and known associates. I encrypted this information and sent it to a secure cloud server with instructions to forward everything to Felix, the FBI, and several journalist contacts if I failed to check in every 24 hours, an old habit from my SEAL days. Always have a contingency plan. The following morning, I noticed something disquieting. The usual crossing guard who helped Erica and other children cross the street to the school bus stop was gone, replaced by a man I did not recognize. He wore the standard safety vest and held a stop sign, but his posture and the way he constantly surveyed the area triggered my internal alarms. I decided to drive Erica to school myself. As we passed the new crossing guard, I recognized him from the photos I had studied all night. He was an associate of Marcus Reed with his own criminal history of assault and stalking. At the school, I walked Erica all the way to her classroom, something I hadn't done since her first week of kindergarten. Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, looked surprised to see me. "Mr. Preston, how nice of you to bring Erica in today." I quietly pulled her aside. "Mrs. Patterson, I need you to be exceptionally vigilant about who picks Erica up. Only myself, Carol Jenkins, or my sister Jenny are authorized. If anyone else appears, even with official-looking paperwork, please call me immediately." She must have seen the gravity in my expression because she nodded seriously. "Of course. Is everything all right?" "Just taking some extra precautions," I replied, giving her a card with my direct cell number. That afternoon, I picked Erica up from school myself rather than letting her take the bus. Call it parental intuition or tactical awareness, but something felt wrong. It was a good thing I did. As we were leaving, I saw Tyler sitting in a rental car across the street from the school, taking pictures of students as they departed. When he saw me looking at him, he sped away, but not before I captured several clear photos of him and his vehicle. The situation was escalating rapidly, and their actions were becoming bolder. That evening, I held a family meeting with Erica. She was mature enough to grasp basic safety principles without being frightened. "Sweetheart, you know how you have fire drills at school?" She nodded. "Well, we're going to practice some safety drills here at home, too. If I ever tell you to go to your special spot, what do? We had established this protocol after Meredith passed away. Erica's special spot, was a reinforced closet in my office equipped with a direct line to 911 and enough provisions for 24 hours. I go inside, lock the door, press the red button to call the police, and don't come out until you say the code word, she recited. What's our code word? I prompted. Dinosaur pancakes, she replied with a faint smile. It was what Meredith used to cook for her on Sunday mornings. That night, I made a challenging decision. Hey, princess, I said to Erica after dinner. How would you like to spend a few days with Aunt Jenny? She's been asking when you'd visit again. Erica was thrilled. My sister lived near Seattle and always doted on her. Can I bring my rock collection to show her? She asked enthusiastically. Of course. Pack your favorites. But as I assisted her with her packing, a cold fury intensified within me. These men had made my daughter feel unsafe in her own home. That was an unforgivable transgression. In the SEALs, we had a saying, never start a fight, but always finish it. They had started this. I intended to finish it. After dropping Erica off at my sister's the next day, I initiated the second phase of my plan. I called Felix and two other neighbors I trusted, both fellow veterans. Jim Rodriguez, a former Marine Scout sniper, now ran a successful landscaping business. Pete Williams was a former Air Force Security Forces officer currently employed as a private investigator. Gentlemen, I began when they convened in my garage. We have a situation. I presented everything I had uncovered, showing them the dossiers I had assembled. Their expressions grew increasingly grim with each detail. These aren't just scammers, Pete noted, examining the surveillance photos. This is an organized crime operation. Jim nodded gravely. The fake crossing guard, the surveillance of the school, they're mapping out vulnerabilities for a snatch and grab. Having my worst fears confirmed, we formulated a tactical response. They'll make their moves soon, I predicted, probably when they think I'm vulnerable, alone, and unaware. Felix, who had been listening quietly, interjected, legally, we need them to commit an actual crime before we can act. Attempted fraud isn't enough for serious charges. I offered a cold smile. They'll commit a crime. We just need to make sure we're ready when they do. The trap required meticulous preparation. I installed hidden cameras throughout the house, separate from my visible security system, which fed into a hardened recording system in my basement with automatic cloud backup. I also placed some expensive-looking bags near windows where they would be visible from the outside, bait for thieves who assumed the house was unoccupied. Inside these bags were GPS trackers and die packs, similar to those used by banks. If they took the bait, we would be able to track their movements and mark them for later identification. I also prepared the ground floor tactically. I removed anything that could be used as a weapon, created natural choke points to funnel them into areas with optimal camera coverage, and set up subtle obstacles designed to slow their advance without being obvious. The piano bench was positioned to block the most direct path to the stairs. A Persian rug was placed where someone in a hurry would likely slip, small details that would provide me with tactical advantages in a confrontation. For the final touch, I arranged Erica's room with a child-sized mannequin in her bed, dressed in her favorite unicorn pajamas and a blonde wig that matched her hair color. Motion-activated cameras were positioned to capture anyone approaching the bed from multiple angles. If they were planning what I suspected, they would thoroughly incriminate themselves before realizing they had been deceived. I also left a half-finished glass of chocolate milk and some of Erica's homework on her desk to create the illusion that she had just gone to bed. Then, I began my performance. Over the next 2 days, I followed my usual routine, but with subtle alterations. I made phone calls within range of the hidden listening device I had discovered in my mailbox, mentioning that Erica was back home and that I would be working late on Thursday night. I complained loudly to Carol about my security system glitching, stating that I was waiting for a technician to come fix it on Friday morning. I even staged a conversation with a fake client about an urgent cybersecurity problem that would require me to be at my computer all Thursday night. I didn't have to wait long. 3 nights later, at approximately 2 a.m., my perimeter alert activated. From my concealed position in the garage, I watched as the black Suburban approached with its headlights off. All 3 men emerged, dressed in dark attire. Tyler carried what appeared to be electronic equipment. Marcus held a crowbar, and Dawson clutched a flashlight and those same official-looking documents. They approached my front door with caution, constantly scanning the street for witnesses or patrol cars. Through the external microphones, I could hear their whispered conversation. "Are you sure about this?" Tyler asked nervously. "The kid's definitely here. I saw them through the window earlier. Security systems on the same network as the cameras." I can bypass it in 30 seconds. Dawson's reply was chilling. Griffith wants results. Either this military hero sells voluntarily, or we make sure he has bigger problems to worry about. Child Services takes custody of unattended minors all the time. Once we have the girl, he'll sign anything. I allowed them to work on my front door, knowing they would trigger the silent alarm I had installed as a backup. True to his word, Tyler managed to disable my electronic lock in under a minute. As they stepped into my house, I slipped out of the garage and moved around to the back, coordinating with Felix and my other neighbors via encrypted radio. "They're in," I whispered. "Everyone hold position until they fully commit." Inside, I could hear them moving through the ground floor, collecting the bait bags I had planted. "Check the home office," Dawson commanded. "Get any financial documents you can find. Banking information, investment accounts, anything we can use." I heard drawers opening and papers rustling. They were building a profile for identity theft on top of everything else. Then came the words that sealed their fate. "Check upstairs for the girl. Remember, if anyone asks, we were conducting an emergency welfare check as authorized HOA representatives. The documentation is all in order." They ascended the stairs slowly, with Marcus in the lead, crowbar at the ready. Tyler followed with a small camera, documenting everything for their official HOA records, as Dawson had instructed. They reached Erica's door, which I had left slightly ajar, with a nightlight casting just enough light to create shadows. "She's in there," Tyler whispered, pointing to the shape beneath the covers. "Remember, quick and quiet. We get her to the vehicle before anyone notices." As Tyler reached for what he believed was my sleeping daughter, I emerged from the shadows at the top of the stairs. "Thinking you could touch my little girl was the biggest mistake of your lives," I said quietly. The shock on their faces was almost comical. For a brief moment, no one moved. Then, chaos erupted. Marcus recovered first, drawing a knife and lunging at me with a snarl. 12 years of close-quarters combat training took over automatically. I sidestepped his charge, seized his wrist, and applied a textbook joint lock that resulted in a sickening crack as his elbow hyperextended. Marcus screamed, dropping the knife. I followed up with a precisely aimed kick to the side of his knee, targeting the lateral collateral ligament. The joint gave way with an audible pop, and Marcus collapsed, his leg unable to bear his weight. As he fell, I stripped the knife from his weakened grasp and sent it sliding across the floor, far out of reach. His agonized howls filled the house, but I was already moving toward the next threat. Tyler attempted to run past me down the stairs, but I intercepted him with a perfectly placed heel kick to the back of his knee. There is a specific point just below the patella where the anterior cruciate ligament is most vulnerable. The human knee is not designed to bend backward, but that is precisely what Tyler's did. He went down screaming, his leg contorting in a way that made even me wince slightly. His camera equipment clattered across the floor, memory cards scattering like digital confetti. That left Dawson, who had managed to draw a small pistol with trembling hands. "You're assaulting HOA officials in the course of their duties," he stammered, attempting to maintain his charade even in this situation. The gun wavered as he aimed it vaguely in my direction. "This is all being recorded. You'll lose everything. Your house, your daughter, everything." I actually laughed, a cold sound that made him flinch. "I spent over a decade dealing with real threats, Dawson. You think that pea shooter scares me?" When he hesitated, I moved. SEAL training teaches that action always beats reaction. I closed the distance faster than his untrained reflexes could follow. My hand clamped down on his wrist and twisted. The gun went flying, and I heard the sound of fingers snapping like dry twigs. Before he could register the pain, I drove my knee into his thigh, targeting the femoral nerve. His leg went numb instantly. As he began to fall, I grabbed his shoulder and drove my other knee directly into his kneecap with calculated force. The patella shattered with a sound like a cracking walnut. Dawson joined his accomplices on the floor, clutching his ruined knee and whimpering. I kicked the gun away and surveyed the scene. 3 would-be kidnappers, all incapacitated, all captured flawlessly on multiple camera angles. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 30 seconds. "Gentlemen," I said conversationally, pulling zip ties from my back pocket, "I believe you've made a series of poor life choices." Felix and my neighbors entered through the front door just as I was securing the 3 intruders. The amount of evidence we had amassed was overwhelming. Recorded confessions, stolen property, the attempted kidnapping of what they believed was a child, breaking and entering, assault with a deadly weapon, and impersonating government officials. The cameras had captured every detail in high definition from multiple angles. But I wasn't finished yet. The intelligence operative in me knew that broken bones heal, but broken spirits and destroyed reputations can last a lifetime. Here's what's going to happen. I informed them as they arrived on my floor. You can crawl to the police station, or I can call 911 and tell them 3 armed men broke into my home to kidnap my daughter. Given your records, how do you think that will play out in court? Marcus was now crying, his tough guy facade completely shattered along with his elbow. Tyler had vomited from the pain, his thin frame trembling. But it was Dawson I focused on, the ringleader who had masterminded this entire scheme. You know what happens to child predators in prison, Edward? I asked quietly, crouching beside him. Your boy Tyler there was recording everything, talking about taking my 8-year-old daughter. How do you think that's going to play in Gen Pop? His face turned even paler, if that was possible. But we can make this cleaner. You crawl to the station, confess everything, including who hired you, and maybe the prosecutor goes easier on the charges. Maybe you're just thieves and con men, not attempted kidnappers. The calculation was visible in his eyes, even through the haze of pain. Prison was bad enough, but prison with a child predator reputation was a death sentence. Griffith, he gasped. Benedict Griffith hired us. 250 grand to drive down property values, force sales. The kid was just leverage. We weren't really going to, I cut him off. Save it for your confession. Now choose. The crawl or the call. They chose to crawl. The spectacle of 3 grown men in torn suits crawling down the middle of Maple Street at 3 a.m. became legendary in Silver Creek. Neighbors emerged from their homes to watch. Some recording on their phones, others simply shaking their heads in disgust. Carol brought out cookies and hot coffee for the impromptu neighborhood watch gathering. Always knew you were one of the good ones, Galvin, she said, patting my arm. This man picked the wrong neighborhood and definitely the wrong father to mess with. Word spread rapidly through our community network. By the time the trio had crawled a block, dozens of neighbors lined the street. Some shouted insults. Others just watched in silent satisfaction as justice was served. Jim Rodriguez set up lawn chairs and offered commentary as if it were a parade. Look at that form on the big one, he observed. Really favoring that left elbow. Good technique on that joint lock, Galvin. Pete Williams was documenting the entire event with his professional camera, ensuring we had evidence from every angle. The crawl took over an hour. 6 blocks of asphalt, their knees leaving bloody trails on the pavement. Dawson attempted to stop several times, but the assembled crowd would not permit it. Keep moving, con man, someone yelled. You wanted to be in charge of our neighborhood. Now you can inspect the streets up close. By the time they reached the police station, their expensive suits were in shreds, their knees were raw and bloody, and their spirits were utterly broken. Detective James Rodriguez was waiting with handcuffs and a growing smile. Mr. Preston, he said as I handed over my evidence files, I think you just solved about 15 open cases across 3 states. The detective had been tracking similar HOA scams for months, but had been unable to connect all the dots. My dossiers, combined with the video evidence and Dawson's blubbered confession, created an airtight case that would have repercussions across multiple jurisdictions. The aftermath was swift and satisfying. Dawson's full confession, recorded as he lay on my floor, implicated Benedict Griffith directly. It turned out Griffith had paid them $250,000 to terrorize Silver Creek residents into selling their homes at a discount. But Dawson went further, detailing similar operations in 6 other developments across 3 states. With multiple federal agencies now involved, Griffith's empire crumbled within weeks. The investigation uncovered the full extent of the operation. Griffith had been using Dawson's crew for years, targeting neighborhoods with specific demographics: older residents, single parents, recent immigrants, anyone who might be intimidated by official-looking documents and legal threats. They had forced dozens of families from their homes, always managing to stay within legal gray areas until they attempted to take my daughter. That was their fatal error. Crossing from fraud into attempted kidnapping brought the full weight of federal law enforcement down upon them. Griffith tried to flee but was apprehended at the Canadian border with $5 million in cryptocurrency and a fake passport. His laptop, seized during the arrest, contained detailed plans for Silver Creek and several other neighborhoods. He had already pre-sold our properties to developers, promising delivery within 6 months. The trial was almost an anticlimax. With the sheer volume of evidence I had collected, supplemented by findings from the federal investigation, their public defenders convinced all four to accept plea deals rather than face a jury. The sentencing was everything I had hoped for. Edward Dawson received 15 years for attempted kidnapping, fraud, and racketeering. The judge described him as a predator who exploited people's trust in authority to terrorize families. Marcus Reed was sentenced to 20 years for assault with a deadly weapon, violation of parole, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. His extensive criminal history worked against him. Tyler Watts received a 7-year sentence and was required to register as a sex offender for his attempted crimes against what he believed was a minor. The judge specifically noted his disturbing focus on documenting a child's bedroom. Benedict Griffith was sentenced to 25 years for conspiracy, racketeering, fraud, and attempted kidnapping by proxy. The judge termed his crimes a calculated assault on the American dream and ordered full restitution to all victims. His company, Apex Investments, went bankrupt following the scandal. Several other executives faced charges for related schemes in different cities. The lots they had already acquired in Silver Creek were sold to a local conservation group, which transformed them into a community garden and playground. The neighborhood response was overwhelming. We did end up forming a neighborhood association, not an HOA, but a group that organizes block parties and looks out for one another. Felix was elected president, and his first official act was to ban the formation of any HOA in perpetuity. We established a neighborhood watch, set up a secure communication network, and created a fund to assist any resident facing legal intimidation. The Silver Creek model has since been adopted by dozens of communities nationwide. Erica returned home to find her rock collection featured in the new community garden with a plaque that read, "Erica's Geological Wonders." She still talks about her vacation at Aunt Jenny's, blissfully unaware of how close she came to real danger. We have had conversations about safety and awareness, but I have shielded her from the darker details. Some innocence is worth preserving, and she has plenty of time to learn about the world's dangers. These days, life has mostly returned to normal. I continue to work in cybersecurity, but I have also started a side consulting service to help neighborhoods identify and prevent HOA fraud. It's astounding how prevalent these scams are becoming. I have testified before state legislators about the need for stricter regulations on HOA formation and clearer penalties for fraudulent activities. My story has been featured in several true crime podcasts, usually with titles like "The Seal Who Made Criminals Crawl." My military brothers check in regularly, proud of how I handled the situation. "Still got it, Navy," Jim likes to say. Once a SEAL, always a SEAL. But I know the truth. This wasn't about my training or my skills. This was about a father protecting his daughter and a community standing together against those who would prey on the vulnerable. The physical confrontation lasted mere seconds. The real victory was in the preparation, the investigation, and the neighborhood's unity. Last month, a door-to-door salesman came through the neighborhood selling home security systems. He made it about 3 houses before Carol intercepted him with a plate of cookies and a very specific warning about what happens to unwelcome visitors who disturb our peace. The poor guy practically ran back to his car. As he drove away, Erica looked up from her newest rock specimen and asked, "Dad, why do people keep saying you broke some bad guy's knees?" I ruffled her hair and smiled. "Just a story, princess. But remember what I always tell you. Nobody messes with our family." She nodded seriously, then returned to examining her rock. "Cool. Hey, did you know that Stegosaurus had a brain the size of a walnut?" I laughed, cherishing her innocence. "Tell me more about dinosaur brains, sweetheart." And she did, for the next hour, while I half listened and kept one eye on the street, always watching, always ready. Some nights, I still check the security cameras more than is necessary. Old habits die hard, and once you've seen how quickly safety can be threatened, you never quite relax completely. But when I hear Erica laughing with the neighborhood kids, when I see Carol teaching them to plant flowers, when Felix waves from his patrol car, I know we did the right thing. Sometimes justice comes from the courts, sometimes from the community, and sometimes from a father who refuses to let anyone harm his child. And if that means a few criminals have to crawl on their bellies through the streets, well, I can live with that. The story of this Silver Creek crawl, as it came to be known, spread far beyond our neighborhood. It became a cautionary tale in criminal circles and an inspiration to communities facing similar threats. Property assessors and HOA representatives now think twice before approaching our neighborhood, and they always call ahead. We've had news crews, documentary makers, and even a Hollywood producer express interest in our story. But we've politely declined. Some stories are better left as local legends. 3 years later, the scars have faded, both on the street where they crawled and in our community's collective memory. The playground built on Griffith's seized lots is always filled with the sound of children's laughter. Erica's rock collection has blossomed into a full-fledged geology club at her school. She's 11 now, more aware of the world's dangers, but still wonderfully optimistic. Sometimes she asks about that night, having pieced together parts of the story from classmates. I've told her age-appropriate truths, that some bad men tried to scare our neighbors and that I stopped them. "Did you really make them crawl to jail, Dad?" she asked recently. I considered my answer carefully. Sometimes, sweetheart, people who try to hurt others need to understand what it feels like to be powerless. They needed to feel what they made others feel. She thought about this, then nodded. Like when Billy was pushing smaller kids at recess and the principal made him apologize to each one. Exactly like that, I agreed, marveling at her insight. But bigger consequences for bigger bullies. In the end, that's what it was all about. Consequences. For too long, men like Griffith and Dawson had operated without them, preying on the vulnerable, exploiting people's trust and authority. They had forgotten that some people fight back, that some communities stand together, and that some fathers will do anything to protect their children. They learned these lessons the hard way, on their hands and knees, over 6 blocks of asphalt that taught them what all their schemes and frauds never could. That justice sometimes wears work boots instead of a robe, and that the shortest distance between crime and punishment is sometimes measured in bloody knee prints on pavement. Trust your instincts. They're usually right, and it's better to be safe than sorry. Stay vigilant, protect your family, and never let anyone make you feel unsafe in your own home. Because home isn't just where we live, it's what we're willing to fight for.